Here we're given four variables, A, B, C, and D, and we're told that they're all positive numbers. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be dealing with integers, but what it does mean is if we're going to end up using test-its, that we cannot use negatives and we cannot use zeros. The question goes on to say, is A over B less than C over D? So we have a yes/no question involving these same four variables, but I'm going to do something here that might save us some time a little later on. I'm going to rewrite the question. Is A times D less than B times C? That's the exact same question. It's based on the same math. I just manipulated the question I was given. And you might find that doing multiplication is easier than doing division. We won't know for sure until we get down to the facts, but sometimes changing the question up is exactly what it takes to find a big shortcut for the question at hand. Let's take a look at fact 1. It looks a little crazy, but it's honestly not too terrible. 0 is less than C minus A over D minus B. So what we have here is a fraction that is greater than 0. And as far as math is concerned, there's a rule here that applies. Either the numerator and denominator are both positive, or the numerator and the denominator are both negative. Now I'm going to deal with the positive option because I think that's the easier of the two choices. So let's talk about what that means. With a positive numerator, that would mean that the C is greater than the A. And with the positive denominator, that would mean that the D is greater than the B. But I don't know if C or D is bigger. It's possible that C and A are both bigger than D, and vice versa. So there are possibilities here to consider, and I'm going to show you how test-it can make pretty quick work of this. Let's choose some nice easy numbers for C and A. How about 2 and 1? And some nice easy numbers for D and B. Again, 2 and 1. And I'm allowed to do that. Nothing in this question said that the numbers had to be different. All I know is some values are greater than others. So this is our first test, and I'm going to use the multiplication as a gauge. Is A times D, so 1 times 2, less than B times C? And that is also 1 times 2. So the question's asking, is 2 less than 2? And the answer is clearly no. But let me show you a way to make quick work out of another test by keeping just about everything the same but changing one thing. I'm going to make the A, D, and B the same as they were before, but I'm going to make the C really, really big, something like, say, 100. So now let's see how that affects the question. Is A times D, that's 1 times 2, less than B times C? That's 1 times 100. Is 2 less than 100? Yes, it clearly is. So you can see that sometimes you don't have to come up with 4 completely new numbers. You just have to change one of them and you'll get a different answer. Sometimes yes, sometimes no means fact 1 is insufficient on its own. You can knock out A and D, and now we're going on to fact 2. That looks even crazier than fact 1, but let's get it down on the pad and we'll talk about what the rule is. AD over BC squared is less than AD over BC. Now forget the variables here for a second, just look at what's here. It's the same fraction on both sides of the inequality, but the left-hand side has been squared. So you got to ask yourself, what kind of fraction when squared gets smaller? And that's when your memory about exponents and number properties from the Empower Mini Clinic should come in handy, and you'll say, oh, this has to be a positive fraction, something between 0 and 1. It's the only thing that'll get smaller when you square it. So what this means is AD over BC is less than 1 but greater than 0. And as a result, you now have an inequality that you can use. AD would have to be less than BC. That's the only way you would get a fraction between 0 and 1. Now look at this. Look at this carefully and think about what the question's asking. It's asking, is A times D less than B times C? Yes or no? And down here, fact 2 just told you A times D is less than B times C. In effect, you don't even have to use test-it. You have enough information here to know that the answer to this question will always be yes. That makes fact 2 sufficient on its own, and you're picking B. This question is thick. It is hairy. It's definitely upper middle level in difficulty. I wouldn't call it truly advanced because it didn't require high level knowledge or any crazy formulas to beat it. It required some diligence and about 2 to 3 minutes worth of time. That having been said, notice all the different skills we used. We used test-it, we used algebra, we used number properties, we manipulated the question. We did test cases, we did algebra. Lots of different things went into this question. That's why it wouldn't kill you if you got it wrong. But the truth is, this is not an advanced question. And with some basic knowledge of math and some test it, you can beat this thing in 2 to 3 minutes. So if you're looking for like a high 7 score, 750, 720 or above, then this question could seriously carry some weight. This wouldn't kill you if you got it wrong, and you could still get a 700 plus without it. But remember, you're trying to piece together questions that you can get correct in 2 minutes, sometimes 3 minutes. And at the upper middle levels, this is something that would count. So remember the skills, practice, write everything down, work on your memory, work on test it, and you'll find that you'll sometimes use a lot of different skills to solve one question.